Hi, it's Therese and it's time to Give Me 5 with Penny Black. Today I have 5 same but different designs and it's time to go over the top. Now there's 2 different ways that I decided to go over the top, and I'm going to start by walking you through the first way, which is probably my favourite, and this is a partial die cutting technique. So I've got a piece of cardstock here. It's not got a score line in it, and I'm going to be making a top fold card, but I have marked where the middle of the card is so that when I stamp out my image it's not going to go further than that, because I still want it to fit in a normal sized envelope. And that's the only reason why I've put those tick marks on my piece of cardstock, because that's normally where the card would fold. So I'm stamping out this, it's a really pretty flower. It's called Delicate Beauty, and it has a few different flowers in the set, and I'll be using a few of those on this card today. And I'm going to be doing the partial die cutting technique. I've got the coordinating die and I'm just roughly working out where I want to cut to on the cardstock. I've made another tick mark, and because I like to cut with the cutting side up, I need to be able to see it from the back, so I have just added the tick mark and the word cut onto the actual cardstock so I know which side I want to cut. And I know this because I've done it wrong before. I wasn't concentrating. So by doing this, it just means I don't have to start again. I have kind of lined up my cardstock straight on the base plate, and I am using my magnetic base plate for my big shot here, but you can just use a normal cutting sandwich for a thin, wafer thin die. And then for my top plate, what I'm doing is I'm actually just lining it up so that it is with that tick mark on the back of the card, and that way I can run the whole plate through my die cutting machine, but it's only going to cut where the top plate was, because that's where the pressure's going to be. So it's only actually cut half of the die, and because I wrote the word cut on my cardstock, I cut it on the right side, the correct side I should say. So now it's time to make my score lines on my card, and they're not going to be where they normally were on this panel. I'm actually just scoring to where the cut was made. So when I fold it over, the actual partial die cut becomes the back of the card. And I love that it's got the gap in the back of the card. I think that's really quirky. And what gave me this idea is a Christmas card that I got this year, which had done this. It was a bought Christmas card, and it was so much fun. I thought, I'd have to recreate this and try a few different styles with it. So that's what I've got, 5 cards with you to share with you today. And the first 3 are all using this technique. How cool is that? And I just had to cut the excess of the cardstock away so the card was the correct size, the card base I should say. I did leave the colouring in today and really sped it up, and I have used my Prismacolor pencils, and there is a good reason for that. It's because I love to colour with them, of course, you already know that, but also they don't show through the cardstock. So if I was using Copics or the watercolour could potentially warp the card, the Copics can show through, and if that doesn't bother you, then go ahead, use them. You can always put some design paper or something on the back to cover it up, but I thought it's just easier to go with the Prismacolor pencils. So all of my cards have been coloured today. There's one I think that I don't colour at all on it, but all the others, they're all coloured with pretty much the same colours. How cool is that? The sentiment was taken from a new set called Good Wishes, and it's a really, really awesome sentiment set. Actually, I use a few of them today on my cards. So my second design is I've stamped out a little hedgehog in a teacup, and this set's called Tea Time. And I thought it'd be fun to add a some texture to the floor. I don't know what made me think to do this. It just made it more complicated. But anyway, there you go. So I've got a die, and rather than cutting it, I want to make an impression. So I'm using tab 1 base plate. I have my die in place, which is called wood floors, with the cardstock, adding a silicone mat and a top plate, and then I can just run that through my big shot. And that'll give me an impression of that die rather than actually cutting it out. I added some colour to the cardstock first because I knew it would be hard to get some colour in there after I'd done the debossing with the die. And then all I had to do for the floor was just add a bit more colour. And I did use the Gamsol, and that seemed to work, and added a bit of shading. How cute's this little hedgehog? I have got the coordinating die for this as well, and I thought this one would make a really good gift tag, because when it die cuts, it actually die cuts a hole in the handle of the teacup. So I thought, you know, you could easily add a bit of twine to that and then tie it onto a present. I thought that'd be fun. I do add a bit of shading to all these images, and I thought I'd add some details of some little dots with my pink pencil. And that's what I love about pencils. They're so forgiving. You can add more layers if you're not kind of happy with it. You can get more depth down the track, as long as you don't press too hard. So I did the same partial die cutting technique. It is important to, when you've got a small image like this and a small card, when you fold it over, you need to make sure that you've got enough space for your image on the back. You can't just make it the card too short, otherwise when you open it there'll be a big gap in the back and nowhere to write. This same die set comes with the word T, so I have cut that out as well. There's some brown cardstock and popped up part of the sentiment from the set as well. So all my cards today I've added some droplets, and I just thought they were fun. I like droplets. Oh, this one's a little bit different, same but different, of course. This is called the Flights of Fancy, and this is a landscape card this time. And I've just partially die cut the butterfly. I just love how the inside of this card turned out with those antennae. And then I've got no colouring in this card because I want to add my colour with the die cuts. So I did cut it out with some teal blue cardstock or pool blue cardstock, and layered that directly over top of the butterfly. And then I can cut out what I did was cut out the monarch, which is a new die. It coordinates with this one, and I just cut that out in some black cardstock because I want to layer it over top. But I just thought this was by adding a full die cut for the first butterfly, I'm not going to have any die cut lines, and I didn't have to try and work it out to line it up and create a panel for the front. And I thought once I added the black die cut over top, you're not actually going to see that there is two more layers of cardstock there. I die cut a second one out in some hot pink cardstock and added that to the front as well. And then I took a sentiment from the Tea Time set and just stamped that with my Misty because I didn't want to start again. And added some black droplets this time, which I think are really cool. So now this is the second way that I'm going to show you how you can achieve this look if you don't have a coordinating die. So I've got a piece of cardstock on the base of my Misty, but I've also got a normal sized card sitting on front, and that's just helping me with my placement of my images. This time I'm using a set called Critter Celebration, and I'm stamping it out on this panel that's actually cut bigger than what I need, and that just gives me a bit of leeway. I simply just colour these in with my Prismacolors yet again and kept the same tones. I liked the colour that these mice turned out. I did them in like a warm grey and they are so cute. I did come in also and added some blue chalk around the edges of the images. You could do that with pencil, you don't have to do it at all. And what I'm trying to show here is that you can actually do this technique with any of the stamps that you have, and it can create little scenes like I'm trying to do here. So I know that the two bottom mice are going to be grounded because they're going to be on the base of the card, but this top mouse here, I've decided that it's flying up in the air and it's delivering that little letter. See, this is a very complicated scene that I've created. The little mouse is looking down at the other mouse with the present. So I decided to make this mouse look like it was spinning up in the air. I saw Sandy do a recent video on how to do this, so I had to practice first. I wasn't sure if it was going to work out, so thank you, Sandy, you're awesome. And I did struggle a little, and I'm glad I did practice first with drawing my spinning lines. But I think it does look like the mouse is spinning, at least a little bit. So how I get this image to look like it's over the top is to simply cut my cardstock down. Now it's cut down to the panel size of the front of a card, and then I can just cut away the portion that I want that's going to be above the card. So I'm just fussy cutting. I'm not doing anything fancy, and that's how I'm saying, like, you can actually do this technique with pretty much any stamp that you want. You don't have to have a coordinating die to do the partial die cut, although that is my favourite way to do it, because then you end up with the gap in the back of the card and people think, how did you do that? How did they get that done? But this gives you the same look and it's still fun for sure. So then all I had to do was make a card base that I could attach this panel to directly, and I simply just measured that with a pencil mark and scored it and folded it. So this is another sentiment from that same set. It's really cute. Probably my favourite sentiment out of the set. And then I just use my ATG adhesive to add it to the front of my card. And there's my little popped up spinny mouse. How cool is that mouse? They're all cool actually. And I do have one more example to share with you, because it wouldn't be Give Me 5 if I only made 4 cards, would it? This is a red rubber cling stamp and it is awesome. It's called Rose Garden and it's quite a big stamp, and I thought it'd be so much fun to make an over-the-top card using this. But what I did differently for this one is I did make it a landscape card, and I made it a side fold as well. These flowers were so much fun to colour. I just loved it. So I did the same thing that I did on the little mouse card. I just cut up to the edge. I used my trimmer. You could use a blade, a craft knife, and a metal ruler if you don't have one of the paper trimmers that you can measure with, or you could do it with scissors, whatever's easiest. And then I just fussy cut around the edges and down to my straight line. Another sentiment from the same set. I did have to stamp it twice because it's a new set and my stamps aren't conditioned yet, and that's what I love about the Misty. So why not give it a try and make some over the top cards? If you like this video, please like it. If you haven't already, I would love it if you would subscribe to my YouTube channel, and I'll see you here again real soon. Till then, happy paper crafting. Bye.